Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 12 of the Isphere. My name is Joy.
And I'm I. And today we're going to be talking about the fucking nightmare TV documentary that Joy made me watch in preparation for this. I
made him watch LuLaRich because I wanted him to get a grasp of the type of conservative MLM that's multi-level marketing, not men loving men. Alt-right kind of pipeline that is currently happening in America, and LuLaRich is a very good example of how that is happening. Because we're also going to be talking about the new TikTok trend of drinking Borax. So why you shouldn't do that. That's what I'm using the LuLaRich to branch off into, by the way. I is not aware of this because I want to get his full reaction when I start talking.
Yeah.
I made him watch that.
Yeah, so LuLaRich, for anyone who doesn't know, is the documentary about a brand in America called LuLaRoe, which sells like different printed leggings and dresses, I think, and skirts, like it's funny how they can kind of immediately be identified as like cheap and cheerful. I think basically there's a unique pattern for every kind of skirt, and people, originally it was quite a viral thing, and then like it happened in 2016 where like they started to recruit sellers of other LuLaRoe, like, you had LuLaRoe retailers, so like, they were very much targeting like stay-at-home mums who would like sell to their friends and then recruit their friends to sell these leggings. And I was like, I knew that Joy was going to give me a tough documentary to watch, because like literally in the first 5 minutes I messaged Joy being like, I fucking hate these two people. So there's Deanne, who is the kind of main woman honcho, and her husband Mark. And like you kind of get the deep dive on their personal life at the start of this. They're Mormon, and they are like the breeding world champions or something like that. They've got like 14 fucking kids. Some from past marriages, and some together, and some they've adopted, and some of the kids that they've adopted have like married their own biological kids, and it's just like this.
Well, it was his son from his first marriage and her daughter from her first marriage, and they got married.
But then but there was also one of the ones they adopted from Romania, I think, also. And it was like, and they make like a joke about it, and it's like, oh, we're delighted to announce our son's marriage to our daughter. And it was like, that'll be a fun thing to say at the wedding. And I was just sitting there like, oh, I hate my life. Why is Joy making me watch this?
Because you tagged me in the vampire facial thing, or the vampire penis facial thing.
And then some twat on Tumblr decided to go full throttle for you. I saw that. I was like, what the fuck?
Oh yeah, I spread medical misinformation apparently. That's why I tell people not to drink Borax.
Yeah. But yeah, I think the thing with LuLaRoe is just, the whole thing is such a trip. And I think someone's already mentioned it in chat, but it does come across as like, yeah, they started with the best intentions, their product was originally quite good, that's how they were able to get all of these people on board. Like they basically started off like they offer packages, and it was like, if you spend $5,000 you would be sent out your first LuLaRoe like package. You got like 25 skirts and 30 dresses and all this kind of stuff, and you would then immediately start trying to sell them to your friends, your family, and people in the area. And I think the reason that it was able to work quite well is that like all of the patterns for each of this were like kind of marketed as being like limited edition, so they only made, or they claimed to only make a certain amount of them, and all of them were sent out. So there was this kind of, from a consumer perspective, there was like a fear of missing out, which while I was watching it I was like, that's 100% how a lot of the cosmetic skin microtransaction stores and games work. because if you go on like a store like Fortnite, for example, the store has a 24-hour timer on it, and it's like you have no idea when that's like you could easily flip a switch and the skins that you could purchase that day would be available for forever, but it's like because they only show certain things per day on the shop, they are like deliberately kind of making this, it's focusing started a gacha style game recently, and the FOMO is real. It's like that. It's gambling basically, but I think obviously with this it's a bit more real worldy.
It's also, just talking about games, it's really insidious because Disney's Dreamlight Valley does the same thing.
Yeah. Is that the kind of Disney Stardew?
It's the Stardew of Disney.
Yeah.
I've played it, it's fun, it's not anything revolutionary or special, but it is very much geared to, you've got 24 hours to get this special thing, and it's, ask your parents for money.
Yeah. Go and ask for mummy's credit card.
Yeah. So it's very kind of insidious for a lot of these things. And it's also James Stephanie Sterling, who's obviously, I don't think there'd be anyone here who doesn't know who that is, but she does game reviews, and they have a whole bunch of stuff on their channel about how these things are actively, harmful to people with like gambling addiction or ADHD or any sort of impulsiveness, and it's designed to take advantage of that kind of thing where it hooks you in and you can't stop because it gives you the dopamine rush.
Yeah.
And it's very kind of it should not belong in games marketed to it shouldn't belong in games full stop, but it should not be in games marketed to children, and it is. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
And again, the kind of the LuLaRich stuff. I'm gonna stutter over that this whole time. I'm sorry.
It's a nightmare.
People don't know this. I have a stutter. That I work very hard to. I do a lot of speech therapy for, and LuLaRich is a nightmare for me to say. But the LuLaRich stuff, they specifically target moms with young kids, and they started making like stuff for kids as well, and the kids all wanted to look like mummy, and it's like that kind of like, if you don't get this, you won't match with your kids and you'll miss out. And it was always very, when I was watching the documentary again, because I've seen it before, I was watching it again, I'm like, wow, these people are actually evil.
Oh, like, yeah, it's
just straight up like, and if, they'd be selling like snake oil in the Wild West. Like that is what they would be doing.
I think it's really interesting. So like the two owners of the company are being like interviewed. I don't think at the time of the interview they knew what the documentary was going to look like. I think it was pitched to them as like you can tell your side of the story, and then the documentary came out, and I think they basically have said that they didn't agree to a second interview on the back of it. But it kind of is. It does a good job in setting the scene. In the first episode, it's very much about the company and how it grew so rapidly that they moved to. Funnily enough, they actually moved to their base of operations to where my sister stayed in the US. They were in Corona, California. And they moved this giant kind of like headquarters there, and they've got all of the factory kind of just churning out stuff, and they're interviewing former members of staff, and like some of the members of staff are really fucking funny actually. There's this designer woman who just absolutely does not give a shit about the company and is like happy. She was like, I was being asked to churn out 110 designs a day, the whole place was like a shit show.
They were being encouraged to steal images off Google, and as long as you change up to 20% of the image, it is no longer considered copyrighted, and then you can use it. That's also how you see a lot of these kind of like, the people that make your book covers really fast. A lot of them are using images they don't technically have permission for, but they've altered it just enough that they can get away with it.
Yeah, and you later find out at the end of the documentary that some of the designers just didn't alter them, so that's how they
were just taking them straight off Google. Yeah,
they ended up getting caught for that, and I think they were like basically it takes you through the whole thing, and you meet some fucking weird characters. I think it's like their two sons are like there's a nephew who's the head of like marketing and events, and he's nuts. He's the guy that was supposed to set these massive LuLaRich events for all these stay-at-home mums to get like really really hyped up, and he was hiring like Kelly Clarkson and Katy Perry to like hold like private gigs for them at these events. And there's a bit like 2 episodes in where they say that he got fired, and he gets to kind of he's been appearing in interviews, but he's like he got fired because apparently he was just having sex with a bunch of these stay-at-home mums who were coming to the events, and that wasn't
which he denies.
He does deny it.
Yeah.
And
the whole thing's
it's
weird.
just
the
fucking
whole thing
strange.
is so weird.
And it gets progressively worse as well. Like you hear, so the way it works, and I'm not going to do like a baby's guide to pyramid schemes here, but I think the way that the organisation worked was quite... So like you go in at the bottom as a retailer, you then, I think it was like you get 3 to 5 people underneath you, and you become a trainer, and then you become a coach, and you needed to... Like if to be a coach, you had to have a certain number of trainers underneath you, and then you become a mentor, which was like the highest level. Yeah, like a highest level, where it was like, so all of these people would like almost pay homage to you, because obviously it all pays up, but you would have like coaches and trainers underneath you, and I never quite understood how it worked, because there's surely like a point where that caps out, where like you can't, like you could technically be a mentor underneath another mentor because there's no other levels. So I didn't quite understand how that like progressed. So to be a mentor, you had to have 5 coaches, but if you already had a mentor above you, could you become a mentor, or were you like locked at coach? It didn't really explain that. It didn't, but I feel like these things aren't meant to be understood.
No, they're not. The only people that profit from MLMs are people that get in at the start.
Yeah.
People that are there at the very beginning. Everyone else after that is operating at a loss by default.
I think they say that on average 80%.
80% on average will be operating at a loss. There's only 20% of people make profit, and it tends to be the 20% that were there at the very start.
Yeah.
I want to get into their characters, because the Deanne person
is evil. Is absolutely evil.
The story, like she talks about how my maiden name was Startup.
Oh fuck!
And I'm staring at it, going, is that true, or is that just lore that you built for yourself to build into this mythology that you are who the image you are presenting? And the story about her mum, the whole thing with like, she's like, it was 1970 something, I think she said.
Yeah.
And it was her mum closed a big deal, and she paid $3,000, and she said, which was a lot of money back then. And I'm sitting here going, it's a lot of money right now.
Yeah.
And her mum went to the bank and cashed the check in $5 bills. And then the kids, when they got home from school, the mum was like, go stand at the bottom of the steps. I have a surprise for you. And then the kids will stand at the bottom of the steps, and she tells them to close their eyes and count to 3. And they do all that. And then she starts throwing money over the side of the banister. So all this like $3,000 worth of notes come fluttering down. And she goes, Mama did this for you. We're going to go shopping. And it was like, Dan's like, my mother was showing me what could happen if you worked hard and followed your dreams. And I'm like, that sounds like Mum was having I say this as someone who's experienced manic episodes from medications. That sounds like a manic episode. If you are throwing $3,000 over the side of the stairs and you're screaming at your kids, we're going to go buy ice cream. It's like to me, that is the kind of shit I would do if I was high on whatever medications interacting with my other ones. And I was sitting there going, that's mental illness masquerading as hustle. That's not okay. That's not normal.
And it's funny because like Jessica watched it with me, and I think there was some pretty clever editing on the just on the documentary, because a lot of the times it was juxtaposed, like what she was saying in her interview was immediately juxtaposed with like her deposition when she's on trial, and it's like like she's happy to portray this like I'm very in control of my business. I'm a hustler. I am at it every day. I constantly graft. And then you saw in the deposition being asked like the most basic questions about the operation. Like she couldn't tell the folk on the other side of the deposition whether she was co-CEO or not. And
I don't know. My husband deals with that.
Yeah, deals with that. My husband's the money man. Yeah.
It's such a her mum was apparently this 70s women's right advocate, but it was like women's right advocate for like the extreme right, where it was like women's right, we need women's rights but women's rights are separate from men's rights. Women have the right to be women, which major TERF vibes. And then it was like women's rights and men rights, we're not equal, that's not how God made us. And it was like this whole manifesto about like how to interact with your husband and like how to like be a woman. And it was like, shake your curls saucily to show your displeasure, but then again, you're just a little girl, what can you do? Appeal to his manliness, make him feel strong. That way he'll give in to you. And I'm sitting there going, I want to die.
It's the fact that this started to, as far as I'm aware, it kind of started to drip through LuLaRoe's like internal like messaging, because like originally the whole thing was pitched as a like startup. You're a stay-at-home mum. You can make a full-time salary with a part-time job, and then like there was a kind of big thing pushed internally to all of the retailers. It was like, you can retire your husband. Like, you can get your husband to stop working because this is going to earn you so much money. And it's funny because you've got a lot of people who are like former retailers going like, this is the most insidious bit, because it's like, you want families completely dependent on the brand. You hadn't just lured in the mum, and like some of the mums were like clearing out their fucking nurseries in order to convert them into like LuLaRoe selling pods, and like the children were being put into like rooms together, and like they didn't have their own room anymore and stuff, and it was really quite creepy. And a lot of them do say like, there's a bit where they go to all of these events and they get invited to like the LuLaRoe cruise and stuff, and I think some of them said that when they started to realise it was a cult is when the guy Mark started to stand up and read from the Book of Mormon. And it's funny how all it takes for some people is like the moment you start quoting stuff like that, folk go, wait a minute. wait a second.
It wasn't the things where Deanne was on these live calls saying, as a woman, sometimes you just got to get on your knees for 5 minutes of the day to keep your man happy.
Yeah. And then he'll give you money to do whatever you want. And I was it just seems like quite a sweeping thing to say, to like mass indoctrinate a lot of women. Yeah. And then once you got to a certain level, there was the whole thing about the gastric band surgery in Mexico that I was like, what in the goddamn fuck is like. So the woman Deanne apparently has like a contact down in Tijuana, and like starts to actively encourage some of the higher level people to go and get gastric band surgery. And apparently they run buses. There's like they're filling up buses of women to go and get like gastric band surgery in Tijuana, and you're sitting there going, that just sounds kind of human trafficking at this point. It's like, what the fuck?
But if someone said to me, like it was, you were taken out to dinner by your boss and they started saying to me, you should really dye your hair blonde to fit in more with the corporate culture, I'd be like, that's a red flag. If it got to the point where I dyed my hair blonde, I was dressing the way they wanted me to, my husband had quit his job to work with me, and they said to me, you should get gastric bypass because we want all of our women to look our best.
Yeah.
That would be the moment where I'd be like, wait a minute. But for some reason, some of these women were like, yeah, sure, I'll do that.
Yeah, I mean, this is why I found the designer lassie the fucking funniest, because like she got a promotion. She came in as like a designer, and she was like, but she moved up to like a kind of middle manager position, and during her like interview for that promotion, they were like, "We are promoting you, but we haven't seen you wear any LuLaRich in the past 3 days," and she was like, "Okay."
But it is really insidious how they got into these women's heads, and they use, as Tundra's saying, the cultural fat phobia of kind of the American, like, you have to be the perfect housewife, and it was basically grooming them to be Stepford wives. It was to have no thoughts in their head, to be as blonde and skinny and obedient as possible. And I remember looking at Deanna and going, "But you're none of those things. You're blonde, but you're not obedient to your husband because, well, maybe she is, but like, her husband still talks about how strong and empowered she is, but none of these women were allowed to be strong and empowered. They had to go to their husband."
Yeah, that was one of the biggest red flags for me about him. Was the fact that he sat there and went on these like fucking god awful monologues about like empowering women and like women's like in intelligence and beauty, and it was almost like, it's like you kind of want, like, you want people to like believe that, but you feel like this was a script that he'd memorized to a T, and he can go off on that spiel about like, "Oh, I'm all about empowering women to be the most, they're so beautiful, they're so fantastic, they're so intelligent, there's tons of smart women out there, and we just want them to be the best they can be." It was just very like, the moment I hear a guy say that, it's a bit like, you've rehearsed that in front of a fucking mirror. I don't mind you believing it. It's just like,
it's also it's infantilizing, because the best they can be to the best of their abilities, not the best they can be against a man, because that's what it means. They're not actually talking about empowerment. They're talking about you being as smart as you can be for a woman, you being as beautiful as you can be for a woman. And it was very obvious, because like a lot of the retailers were saying, I get referred to as, Paul's wife, even though it was my business.
Yeah, and like by the two owners, like it became the men who did eventually like completely embrace the whole LuLaRich thing became the kind of the center point. It was their business.
Well, they used the men for marketing. They used the men to go on cameras and to sell stuff, because it was reaching out to lonely women going, "Oh, these men like it when their wives wear this. I will wear this, and therefore men will like me." Yeah, that was a huge part of it. And it was very much, there was the guy, I think his name was Paul, who was the guy with the goatee. And he was the one who said it's really insidious that the men are encouraged to like quit their jobs, or the women are encouraged to get their husbands to quit their jobs. But like, his thing started as, he got to play the kind of doddery guy who was like fishing through the stock on camera on like Facebook Live, and like getting out and holding it up, going, "Oh, this is a nice one here," and it became a bit of a, he got to play up that kind of doddery bit in the first instance, and lots of people liked it. I'm just a husband. I'm helping my wife with her successful business. Look how supportive I am. Yeah. But it was very, the women that got divorced because of it, and they lost their kids and they lost their houses.
Fuck.
The damage that happened was unreal. And you have Diane treating it well. They didn't try hard enough. Some people have got what it takes to succeed. Some people don't. And I'm like, I genuinely hope that the hell that you believe in exists just so you can go there. And it was just so mean spirited. Like, you saw the videos of them doing these like live videos when there was like the stock they were sending out was moldy, it was rotten. And instead of being like, "Shit, we should probably look
fix
into that,"
this.
They started going, "That must be something you did." They were on all these live videos going, my people are complaining that my stock is stale. No, you're stale. What does that mean? They're literally being sent clothing that is rotted. What are they supposed to do with it?
And the thing was is that the way that the company was set up as well was that they're a wholesaler, so they were selling to the retailers who were purchasing the stock from them, and they weren't reimbursing any of the faulty stock that was sent out from the warehouse. And it was like, folk were saying that their leggings were like smelly and that there was mold and there was, you know, all sorts. And like one of them said that,
like rats.
Yeah. And one of them also said that they received a box, and one of the leggings, like inside a plastic bag, was just like full of water, and they had to like wring it out, and they were advised to like put it in the freezer. And of course, like, they can't sell this product, so it's like everything that was passed on to retailers that they couldn't sell was like an immediate loss to them, and they had to then try and sell their, like, the products that were okay at a higher price to try and meet that. And I think one of the things that was really clear is, like, all of these women were just living paycheck to paycheck, because everything they sold went into purchasing more stock. There was never any like savings or profit, and any kind of extra that they did get tended to be from the recruitment process. And the bonuses that you would get from recruitment, and they were encouraged to not save those bonuses into any sort of meaningful kind of investment. It was like, go and get a Louis Vuitton bag and say that you got that on the back of LuLaRoch's business model. So it was very, yeah. The whole thing was just incredibly fucking cursed.
It was very cursed viewing, and thank you for sitting through it. But it was just, I needed you to understand how insidious that type of thing is.
I mean, you know, I think it's easy to see the two folk at the head of it as obviously the masterminds behind it, but for me it was the fact that like all of their children got involved in the business, right, in a really like creepy way, as in some of them were like head of sales, one of them was head of training, and you saw, because they also got deposed, and you know, a lot of them are pretending they just don't know fucking anything about their job. There was one guy in particular whose whole role was just about, I think he even says it in the fucking videos, because he's like, there's an internal call where he's like, right everyone, we're making some changes to how the company operates. You're not going to be getting paid these bonuses out. You'll only get paid these bonuses based on sales, because we want to move away from being a pyramid scheme.
Straight up says it. And then when he was asked in court, he was like, no, I never said that. And then they showed him the video and he was like, yeah. And just like, they think they're so smart. They think they're never going to get caught out because they've been able to coast by on privilege. Yeah. And it really got to me that they kept talking about themselves as if they were poor growing up. And
yeah, like, they absolutely fucking weren't. Yeah.
No, it's like if your mother can take $3,000 and throw it down the stairs for a fun thing for the kids, you're not poor.
Yeah.
Or your mother's manic. Like one of the two.
Even still, like again, $3,000 back in the 70s, and just like, to do something like that, it's just...
How much? I'm going to look it up. How much was $3,000 in the Sunto?
Probably a fair amount. I mean, even if you just took $3,000 as it is at the moment, you'd be like, what the fuck?
$3,000 in 1870 was $23,590.90.
Like, what the fuck? It's just...
You could buy a house for that back then, and she's throwing it down the stairs going, we're going to get ice cream, and that was my mother teaching me what I could do if I worked hard. And I'm like... And yet she's like, but we had nothing. And I'm like, you had something.
Yeah, you had lots.
You had cars, and you had good clothes. What you didn't have was designer shit.
Yeah.
That's not the same thing as being deprived. That's not the same thing as growing up poor. And they kept like, oh yeah, we came from nothing. No, you didn't.
Yeah.
You absolutely... There's more about them online if you look into their history. They came from middle class background, which today doesn't even fucking exist. There's no such thing, because everyone's one medical emergency in the US away from total bankruptcy. Yeah. But they were talking about how like, oh well, we worked hard. I'm sure you did put hours in. I'm sure you did put a lot of hours in, and you spent your own money, and that is hard work. You did not make your billions on hard work. You made it on exploitation, which is the truth of anyone that makes billions. It's not made on hard work. It's made on exploitation. And the fact that they had the gall to be like, well, some people just have what it takes to succeed. And I'm like, you deserve everything bad to happen to you. You deserve your children to go to jail. You deserve to go to jail yourselves.
Yeah.
MLMs are legal in the US, but pyramid schemes aren't. So the deposition was to try and discern whether it was a MLM or a pyramid scheme.
Yeah.
And it's a pyramid scheme.
I mean, I think the Washington State specifically have brought the actual, I think it's the Attorney General for Washington has brought that charge to them. That in civil court, at least, that they are very much so that the thing is, what I thought fucking easy for me to say, MLMs are technically pyramid schemes, but where they differ is apparently MLMs sell a good.
They sell a product.
So a pyramid scheme is arguably more focused on purely the recruitment factor, whereas MLMs get to claim that they are selling a good. Now,
it depends on if you make more money from the good or if you make more money from recruitment.
Yeah.
That's the distinction. And the people at LuLaRich are making more money from recruitment than they were selling goods. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's a pyramid scheme.
Yeah. Definitely.
It's like doTERRA, my old friend doTERRA, which everyone, if you've been on my Tumblr for a long time, you know that I've got fucking beef with doTERRA. I've got beef with their cultists, and they are cultists because they are brainwashed, unfortunately. But they all, at least with doTERRA, you can make more money from selling your scam essential oils versus recruitment. You do get money for recruitment, but it's not as much as what you get from actual sales. So that's why doTERRA is MLM and not a pyramid scheme.
I mean, I think it's funny because we were talking about this after we'd watched it, but like, I feel like it's a very American thing.
Yeah,
because like I was trying to think of like what's the big MLM scam in the UK, and it was
Avon.
Like, well, Avon. I was thinking that, but then it was like you do have the product, but I mean, people used to do Avon way back, and your dad sells Avon is obviously that was
the meme in Scotland.
Yeah, it got overused horrendously. But yeah, like I mean, what I'm saying is I haven't heard anyone talk about Avon for I mean, it was probably early 2000s. I remember when Avon was kicking around, but
so the top 10 MLMs in the UK, surprisingly, are Ann Summers.
Ann Summers, what?
Because you have the parties. So you have the women that host the parties, and you go to these parties, and then you sell the products to these women, and then you also, that's what those are. The lingerie parties and the toy parties do count as an MLM.
They exist. What the fuck?
Yeah,
I've not been invited to any of them.
I used to go to a lot of them because my pal worked for Ann Summers. Cleanies, which I've never heard of, which looks like a cleaning company. Avon is number 3. F&M Cosmetics is number 4. Herbalife is number 5. Herbalife's a big one over here as well. Number 6 is Utility Warehouse. Forever Living is number 7. Phoenix Trading. Number 9 is US Born. Number 10 is Party Light. There's tons and tons of them.
All I can say is that they're obviously not making any waves because I've only heard of Avon and Herbalife, but that was because Herbalife was mentioned in the documentary.
Surprisingly, doTERRA is number 18. I thought that would be higher, but then again, there are independent essential oil companies in the UK, so maybe they're higher.
Yeah.
But Mary Kay is number 20.
Okay.
But there's a lot of people in the comments on this place saying, I do this and it's not an MLM, it's a genuine business, and it's like, we just make money from selling products at parties. That's an MLM, sweetheart. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's the definition of what it is.
I mean, to be fair, if you had to pick an MLM to be part of, you might as well have the dildo party one as opposed to the like.
They were a lot of fun. They were, when I went to them, it was, whether you bought anything or not, it was just fun for a bit of a laugh. Like, that was kind of circles I ran in when I was in my 20s. But it was, the Ann Summers one was one I knew about. I didn't think it would be the number one. But it's Cleanies is a cleaning, yeah, it looks like a cleaning product thing. And then Avon's
Okay.
number 3. I think it's stronger in certain types of communities. I think Avon's probably still a thing in people my parents' age. I don't think it's so much a thing for us because we get so much of our marketing through places like Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah.
Whereas I can see my mum getting an Avon catalogue from her friend. I can very easily see that.
Yeah, that's fair. It's just it really doesn't strike me as something that, like, I mean, I suppose it's maybe something like an auntie would get into, but like I don't see many young people going out and chasing it, and I don't know many people my age or anyone I was at school with who is like completely entrenched in an MLM.
It's great because of things like Instagram influencers. You don't need to be part of a company anymore. You can be online, have a presence, and get approached by companies.
Yeah,
that I think is the biggest difference, because a lot of the authors I talk to, some of them are younger than me, and they're like, "Oh, I'm getting offers from these companies. Should I take it?" I'm like, "Not if you want to have any reputability of having any sort of telling the truth."
yeah.
I get offers all the time to talk about wellness stuff. I'm not unless it is genuinely something that I use, I do not talk about it. And I get offers all the time for like supplements and vitamins and health cures and tonic teas, and I'm like, I mean, I could wipe out all of my medical debt if I took these on, but I would go to hell because I wouldn't kill myself.
See, I'm constantly bombarded with offers for like sponsorships for like mobile games. So like Raid Shadow Legends, like fucking Top War. There's one called like Swords and Shields or some shit, and it's like you're constantly sent this stuff, and it's like, and it is that kind of thing where it was like you'd have to record a video of you playing it, and you're in the bottom left of the screen, and you have to pretend to be like really fucking into the game, and it's like,
I'm so addicted. I'm addicted to this mobile game. Let me make a video about it. And to be fair, I do get addicted to some of my mobile games because I get hyperfixation.
Yeah, which is fine.
I'm not going to promote that to other people because that's an unhealthy coping mechanism on my part.
The thing for me that makes these really predatory is the fact that they say, oh, we'll give you all the assets and stuff that you need to do. You just need to do your recording or stream or whatever it is. But to get any money from it, you need a certain number of people in your community to not just download the app via your link, they also need to purchase something from the store. And it's like, wait, so it's not enough that I get them onto your app. I'm doing all of this free labour, and then it requires people that trust me to then fucking go and give money to you. Get fucked. I'm not getting involved with that. That's just rank. Yeah, it's fucking bogging care. I mean, I'll have a wee look at just now. I'll pull something up for you, Joy. You can wax lyrical.
Yeah, I was thinking because there's Amazon influencer programs now, and I have a generic Amazon affiliate account that I use to promote my books because it helps me regroup the costs I lose in distribution fees through Amazon. That is primarily why I use it. If someone asks me for a product and tells me to use an affiliate link because they want to give me a kickback, I will do that. But I genuinely, when I link to things, I don't do it. I only do it for my books, and that's why you see affiliate link on there. I've also got affiliates for Apple, Barnes & Noble, and I think Kobo. But you have to declare it, and so many people don't. I mean, I've gone on this rant a million times on this podcast. There's so many people just do not declare that it's an affiliate link, and that's against the law in the US. The IRS will come for you, and it's bizarre to me. Like, I've never, I take supplements daily because of all my health stuff. Not sponsored. I'm not going to show you the brand name, but I get all these things daily from places that are not, we're lab verified. I'd fucking hope so. It's a supplement, but they can't verify to me what is verified. Is it the capsule that's verified? Is it the ingredients that's verified? And then they go, oh, well, you just have such a large following of, healthful, mindful people. We think you'd be a good fit. And I'm like, no, I'm not being recruited into this. I'm not saying, I'm not doing it. Even if it wasn't illegal for me to do it in the UK, which is not, because once you get over 30,000 followers, you legally cannot promote supplements in the UK, which I think is a good thing. But it's just, false hope for a lot of people, because unless you have deficiencies like I do, taking masses of supplements isn't going to help you.
Yeah.
Like, that's, the only reason I take all these is because my body doesn't hold on. I can't get nutrients from food. My body just doesn't do that. My stuff is medically prescribed. I have doctors that prescribe it. I'm not just going to trust somebody on the internet that says, I cured myself by taking this. And I'm like, cool, what did you cure? Was it a deficiency? Because that's the only thing you will cure with taking them.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I cured my autism. No, you didn't.
Doubt.
Sorry. No, you didn't. And that's also what we're going to talk about later with the Borax trend.
Yeah, because we're going to come on to that. Sorry,
Yeah.
just before we do, though, so to give you a bit of an idea, I currently have 10 sponsorships offered to me via a streaming plugin that I use, which is essential for a lot of the streaming stuff that I do. It's just that they also dangle sponsorships as a big add-on to that. So one of the things they would like me to do is they want a bunch of like free labour. They want me to advertise Raid Shadow Legends. They wanted me to stream with a Raid Shadow Legends branded overlay. They want me to promote Raid Shadow Legends by playing it in a chat with a bot in the chat for 2 hours. I need to stream for 2 hours, and then I will earn a whopping $45 for the first 5 viewers who participate in the promotion, and by that I mean registering with Raid Shadow Legends and creating an account. They then need to complete Raid Shadow Legends to level 12, and then I get a bonus if they reach level 25. Now, that's not 25 fights and you're suddenly there. That's like ranking up, which is like, for a game like that, you're then being asked to pay, like, you want all of the 5-star units and all this utter shit, and it's like, I get 45 fucking quid, and then
that's ridiculous. That is such exploitation of your labour.
But if a bunch of people get up to level 25, bonus goals are available that could earn me up to $600, and it's like, how many fucking people will one do that at all? So I could do that on my stream. I could get 60 people to sign up. Only 3 of them will make it to fucking level 6 in the first day. The rest will get fucking bored and delete it, and then I'll only get a payout for all that effort, for 2 hours of streaming the game and 2 hours of shilling for this fucking soulless mobile game. It's like, absolutely get fucked. I wouldn't touch that with the fucking barge pole. And I suppose, like, again, I know that some people potentially are in an extremely desperate situation and would feel like this is a great opportunity for them to make rent this month. And if you feel like that, that's fine. But these people are earning money off the back of you, and you deserve a lot more compensation. I would say mandatory. You need compensation up front for this. I think the conditions attached to you actually getting paid are disgusting. Like, honestly, just avoid at all costs. Like, the fact that so many people need to sign up and get to a certain point in the game. Imagine if they did that for real fucking games. Imagine if, I was playing the Wandering Village on Friday. Imagine if, like, one of the things for them to, like, if I got sponsored by the Wandering Village, you had to, like, complete a certain fucking amount of the game.
You have to complete 50% of the game for to get paid. Yeah, that's. I mean, no video game retailer would do that. Like, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, you pay for this, but we don't get the money until you've completed 50% of the game."
Yeah, I mean, another one, Star Trek Fleet Command, up to $1,500 I could earn, and it's like, for every player that follows my link and gets to level 10, I get an additional $20. And it's like, I don't know how the leveling system works in that game, but I just think that that's ridiculous.
Basically, if you ever hear I talking about Raid Shadow Legends, as in we're being sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends, assume we've been kidnapped and replaced by pod people, because that's the only way it's going to happen on this channel. But
there's going to be AI bots of us, Joy. Level 10's piss easy. I know solidly endorsed, but I can't, and as much as it would help pay for my fucking boiler, I can't inflict that on people. Getting over 10's hard for free to play. There you go. That's the issue. So it is level 10 plus, is what they say.
Mm-hmm. But it is exploitative, as Onyx is saying in the chat. If you were poor enough that is enticing, you would do it, but you're about to get exploited for your labor.
Yeah.
You'd honestly make more money as an Amazon affiliate and putting recommendations to products on a blog somewhere. Because that's also how a lot of stay-at-home mums make money. They have their blogs and they recommend products. I literally bought something that was recommended on it was a recipe blog, and I was like, oh, that's actually pretty good. And it was, she declared her affiliate links. I'm going, right, that's fine. You've declared them. I don't mind giving you that cutback because you've actually been honest and declared it.
Yeah.
I bought a jam strainer thing for making the jellies and jams that I make.
Oh, nice.
And it was a really good product. And I was like, I'm really glad I read that blog, and I clicked on that. But so many of them just they'll put affiliate links for toilet paper and toothpaste and this is how I cured my son's autism by this product specifically. And I'm like, I hate you. I physically hate you when you use that type of the affiliate thing and you put it in terms of words and cures. I don't mind when it's here's the cooking blog that I do and here's the equipment I have. That I don't care about. That's wonderful. Do what you do. But I understand why people don't like it, which is why, unless someone says to me, can you give me the affiliate link for it, I do not post affiliate links. Because I don't want to feel like I'm shilling things to people. The only thing I'm shilling is my books. That's it. Yeah. And people get mad. People get mad enough at me for doing that as well. And I'm like, sorry for wanting to be paid for my labor.
It's like I'm so glad that there's not that for gaming yet, mainstream gaming. Because if you were able to recommend a game to someone and on Steam and people would fucking grab from that, it'd be awful. It would be absolutely atrocious. Anyway, so why are people on TikTok drinking? What's it called?
Borax.
I thought it was I thought it was LuLaRich, and we were about to get more one-slur discussions.
No, God no. Otherwise known as OxyClean in some places.
Okay,
is what people are drinking.
Why is that just bleach, right?
No, it's like a powder. It's not bleach. It's like a powder. It's like a non-chlorine, whatever it is. And you put it in your washing to make it look white. You use it as a pest killer. It's in a bunch of stuff to kill animals. I cannot emphasize enough. Do not drink borax. And it pisses so this is one of the main reasons I resisted TikTok as long as I did, was because I knew as a disabled person I would start getting certain things on my feed, and it's usually kind of wellness stuff. And this ties back to MLMs because the borax drinking crowd comes from Lego. I know they're putting colloidal silver in their eyes. That's not new. The borax thing is new. But the MLM stuff comes from a very place of take charge of your own destiny, which was what we saw in LuLaRich, was take charge of your own destiny, be empowered, be your own boss, and the wellness aspects of MLMs is what leads to people doing things like the borax cleanse. And the current claim on TikTok is that drinking borax cures joint pain, autism, GI problems. And I'm like, yes, it will. It will eventually cure those things because it will kill you. You can't have those things if you're dead. That is the only way borax will cure any of that. But it tends to be conservative, white, stay-at-home mums who are doing it. And it's, I think, a reaction to knowing that the healthcare system in the US is failing. It's the knowledge that capitalism is failing us as over here so badly, and it's them trying to take back control of something and be like, I'm going to go the all natural route. And it's like, yeah, borax is natural. So is arsenic. And you can't even say to them, so cyanide, because there are people that are chewing on cherry pits because they think the cyanide will help kill parasites that live in their gut. And you just kind of have to stare. I stare at my For You page on TikTok and I can feel the hope for humanity leaving my body. As LuLaRich is saying, so is nuclear radiation. There are some people that I would not put it past them to be like, I'm going to go drink some water that's been sitting in uranium because it will cure me. And it's very insidious because they're saying things like, oh, this gets rid of all the toxins from the vaccine because the vaccines made people sick. And that, if you drink the borax, it'll make you feel better. When actually what may be happening is they feel better because they feel as if they're back in control of their life. And there's a big thing on like witch talk as well at the minute, which is drinking fermented lemon juice will cure parasites. And there's stories about lassies saying, oh, I drank this fermented lemon juice and 30 minutes later worms fell out of my vagina. I didn't even know they were in there. Oh my God, it's so gross. And I'm like, that's not how this works. If lemon juice could kill parasites, we wouldn't need medications. But then the argument for that is that, oh, well, Big Pharma wants you to stay sick because it makes money. And it's like, okay, what about countries where we don't pay for healthcare? What about countries where it comes out your tax and you're not paying through the nose? Why do they still have medicine? And they have no argument for that. And it's such an insidious thing because it's the same type of people that tell you to drink essential oils. It's the same people that have drank the Kool-Aid from MLMs like doTERRA that are telling you, take back your health by drinking essential oils. And I'm like, you are only going to give yourself kidney failure. And it frustrates me because I'm someone who was in, the alternative lifestyle. Like I was put into that whole thing as a kid because my parents had trauma from the medical system. So they went the other route. They went, well, obviously our children are sick because of the medical industry. We should go all natural. In reality, we were sick because we had a genetic disorder we didn't know we had. But you have these people on TikTok are willing to exploit that. Like I literally get things telling me, oh, you have EDS, you should drink Borax because it helps with joint pain. And I'm like, no. And then they argue with you. They try and argue with you with science, but it's not science. It's just pseudoscience. And it's a very reactive need for these people to feel in control. And unfortunately, that feeling the need for control is driving them to drink poison. And eyes just completely silent. He's just staring.
I mean, like, I'm gonna have to try and be diplomatic, Joy, which is fucking annoying. You're putting me in weird positions. Like, why? Like, why do these... Like, I think... Sorry, I'm gonna jump back quickly to the LuLaRich thing, because I think this is an important one. But I find it quite interesting that chances are a lot of the people who have jumped from the Borax trend or whatever, like, and I think what they were saying was like the nature of MLMs is that there is a specific type of person who loves that shit, and like that will be their that'll be their thing. They just get passed around MLMs for the rest of their day. And I'd say that attitude of like, going into the mindset of, yeah, this will cleanse me, the people fucking inventing that worms are falling out their vagina, thank you very much for that imagery, that wasn't at all mentally scarring. Like, I think there's like a deeper... I feel like there's a psychologically deeper thing at play for someone to believe that stuff. And I think, I'm not sure if it's loneliness and isolation and they find community in people who all believe that kind of stuff. Obviously, there's a little bit of a conspiratorial streak to a lot of them if they're then thinking that, the vaccines have introduced toxins and parasites, it must be purged. But it's like, it's very... I don't know. I suppose maybe my if someone was to say that to me, and like, I feel like it's maybe something that was also really really boosted just by online, because I feel like lots of people are way more likely to kind of agree online, maybe, for that sense of community. And I know that a lot of people say, well, maybe it's the reverse, because you'd be more inclined to agree in person because you don't like that sort of like confrontation. But if someone came up to me in the street and started fucking spouting that, I would just absolutely not entertain them. But then again, I suppose I'm not the target audience for these kind of things. Like, I don't think I'd ever be sucked into an MLM, and I think a lot of people with a certain degree of awareness and dare I say intelligence, there's probably a little bit that comes in there. I think
it can be emotional intelligence rather than actual intelligence. It can be, how vulnerable are you? How victimized have you been? What is your emotional intelligence like? Because speaking as someone who came from that world in my teens, I was, my parents were fully going down the rabbit hole. I was an indigo starseed child, which, if you're not aware of what that is, it's the nice way of saying, it was the term was invented so that, because autism was a bad thing. No, you're not autistic, you're not ADHD, you're an indigo star child from another planet here to teach us a lesson about introspection and being special. That's what I grew up with. And I came from that world of, just drink the herbal supplement because it'll be better for you than medicine. I think a lot of people come from that being very emotional and very vulnerable. And as a teenager, I don't mean to brag, I'm intelligent. When people were telling me things, I was kind of going, that doesn't seem right, but there's so many adults in my life saying that it is.
Yeah.
And I was isolated within that community. I was very much told, like, the reason you're on this planet, the reason I was in chronic pain, I was told, was because I was put on this planet to absorb the pain of others. It wasn't my pain I was feeling, I was absorbing it from others because that was my role. And that's the kind of isolation that these things... I've been in therapy a long time because...
No, I totally get that. I suppose... this is where, like, your experience will be, like, infinitely more valuable, because, like, for me, this is really difficult for me to wrap my head around, because, like, I wouldn't entertain that for a fucking second. And I know that it's very different if you've been, like, raised into it, but I suppose what I'm saying is, surely, like, it's different if you're born and you're, like, raised in this, but there is a defining moment where someone who is already an adult starts to think these things. And we've seen a lot of it with the kind of like the right-wing pipeline, and you've seen some people go right down the fucking rabbit hole when it came to like COVID vaccines and stuff. And it's like, at what point is that? And I suppose that, like, maybe it's just how many conspiratorial hooks can you get in one individual. Chances are, if you can convince someone of the slight chance of one thing, there'll be more hooks that you're able to get in on other things. I mean, I think there's obviously, I'd say maybe a scale of conspiracy. People talk about the conspiracy iceberg, actually, where it's like, you can start off with something relatively surface level and can be quite generic, and you can go right down into the fucking abyss. It's like, it would be hard to convince...
it depends on how isolated a person has become. And like you're saying, it can start with a normal thing. In my case, with my parents, it was, we had a incident of medical abuse that was horrific in our family. And it was actually when my brother was born, the doctor dropped my brother on his head, which is how he ended up disabled. And then the hospital lied and said my mother made it up.
Jesus, yeah. I can see how that would shake.
That would make you go, I don't trust doctors. That was the foundation of my life. And then unfortunately, as an adult, I had doctors who looked at our family got tarnished by the NHS because of that, because my mother tried to sue the NHS. She wasn't suing for damages. She wanted that doctor struck off. The NHS claimed he never existed. She had to sue for 10 years to get my brother's medical files. And then she found, when she got them, all of the stuff about his birth had been blacked out, so she couldn't even read it, and that was legal at the time.
Jesus Christ.
And we got blacklisted, so every time I went to an NHS doctor as a child, it was, this family can't be trusted, the mother's neurotic, the daughter probably is too. And it became a full-on, you cannot trust doctors, just go to the herbalist. That's where that started. It can start with one incident. It doesn't have to be as horrific as that. Yeah. But it can start with, I went to the doctor for, my period's painful. The doctor told me it's because I'm fat. And you can have endometriosis is a thing. It's excruciating, and the amount of women who don't get seen before it because it's women's issues.
Don't even get me fucking started on that, Josh.
That can be how it starts. It can literally be, well, I'm going to go see a naturopath, and the naturopath gives you validation. They help you. Yeah. And so you go with them for everything. And I'm not against naturopaths. I think some of them are very helpful. I just make sure that they're MD qualified first. But there are some of them who, once they get into you, they go, well, you just have to keep removing toxins from your environment. And they want you to live basically in a mud hut somewhere and live as pure as possible. Yeah. And it's the obsession with purity that really takes hold in these certain types of things. But it can start with basic things like, the doctor just isn't listening to me. Yeah. And that can be very isolating. It is very, the person that's supposed to help you isn't helping you. Yeah. That's how it starts.
I think that's absolutely spot on. I mean, like, with for those of you who don't know, my partner Jessica has endometriosis, and like, that definitely shook my faith in the NHS, because I ran into so many fucking doctors. In fact, it wasn't until I attended one of her appointments that the doctor would even consider, there might be a bit more to this. Mm-hmm. And all the fucking infantilizing shit that she had to put up with in her fight to even get fucking considered for an endometriosis diagnosis. And you can't diagnose it without surgery. That's one of the things. Like, you can go for all the scans under the sun, and you cannot confirm endometriosis until you have laparoscopic surgery. And just the fucking endless struggle was just, it. Like, we talk about it now. I mean, Jessica's pain is starting to get a bit better because she's on better medication and stuff like that. But like, that and obviously COVID has essentially wiped out our 20s. I mean, we're coming up together 6 years, and like, from maybe a year into our relationship, it was just like chronic pain and agony, and not being able to do a lot of stuff. So I can definitely see how that shakes a faith. I suppose what I'm also just saying is, like, how does one who maybe doesn't encounter a lot of those problems, because like you said, there's quite a lot of wealthy kind of middle class stay-at-home mums in the US who are getting completely onboarded with stuff like this. And I suppose back to the LuLaRich stuff is like, are we seeing the same kind of tangent for the kind of like submissive Stepford wife kind of thing? Yes. And like the other,
it is very much the same thing. It is very, the trad wife trend that's coming up. I think you might have reblogged something that I reblogged on Tumblr, and it was a woman talking about how, since she quit her job and became a stay-at-home mum, her hormones balanced, and she went back into the natural rhythm of taking care of the home, because that's what her hormones wanted. And I was like, that's not what's happening. It was a great amount of stress was removed from you. It's not because you're hormonally meant to be a homemaker. It's because you were under undue stress, because capitalism is killing all of us.
Yeah.
It made me so angry. But there is a huge emphasis on returning to the way things were. And I'm like, no, because the way things were weren't actually the way things were. It's a mythology of like these kind of, they go back to these, well, we made it in the pioneer days. And I'm like, no, you didn't. You died in childbirth after your fourth child.
There was a guy that I saw post, there's like, there is this right-wing like Tory voter view of England at the moment, which is like, huge knife crime, acid attacks, jihadist gangs running around. You know, like it's so like dialed up to 11. And I saw someone tweet it, and it was like they posted a picture of a very idyllic English like country scene that has the postman riding a bicycle into the like to deliver the letters and all this kind of shit. And it was like, this is what it was like when I grew up. We had they had no knives. no
crime,
no jihadist gangs. Yeah, there might be a bit of flickering on my camera. It might just be everything's falling apart here. Everything is just a disaster. I don't know why.
But it is a very mythologized idea of how things were.
Yeah.
And it's like, it was like, oh, but there was no autism back in the day. And it's like, yeah, there was, but you called it being taken away by the fairies. You called the child a changeling.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the only reason there's so much autism now is because it's diagnosed. I mean, the first person to ever be diagnosed with autism only just died recently.
Yeah.
We only have the medical understanding of these things in recent history. It didn't not exist. We thought it was fairies. We thought it was like, you know, like idiocy was a medical definition until very, very recently.
It's weird because like
it's had different names.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things just on the topic of this kind of mythology is that, like, I mean, I'm seeing there's almost two different mythologies. There's like the slightly older person's like, oh, this is, you know, when I grew up it was great. But I'm starting to see like people who are maybe a wee bit older than me, maybe like kind of late 30s, like mythologizing like early 2000s as well. Mm-hmm. And it's like the early 2000s were shite.
They were awful. We had
they were like
the ozone layer that we managed to fix somehow,
they were like,
but it was
shite. It's like, you know, we didn't have half the stuff that we do now, and it just seems weird. I mean, like I saw there was a bit in the paper today about I don't read the paper, I just see articles. But they were saying how Glasgow has changed, and it's dirty and minging, and the town centre's not like a European town centre, and it's like, well, yeah, but I mean, like 10, 20 years ago, it wasn't fucking like that either. You know, it wasn't a bustling European city. I mean, it was the fucking, I think Glasgow is the only city that was voted the knife crime capital of Europe and the friendliest city in Europe in the same month.
They'll stab you, but they'll also show you where the hospital is. That's that's how Glasgow is. But it is a very nostalgic kind of like, and I think that comes from a lot of imperialism and jingoism, because Glasgow was the second city of the empire.
Yeah,
that's where that came from. But it was never a bustling hive like London was. It was just the second city of the empire because of industry, and it was the second city of the empire because of slavery. Yeah. We are not nostalgic for that. No. We should not be nostalgic for that. We should be ashamed. And the fact that people go, oh, well, we're not the second city of the empire anymore. Aye, because there's no fucking empire anymore. And good. Yeah. We shouldn't be.
It's, I think, like, the way that the UK kind of just is just such a fucking clusterfuck. I mean, I don't want to jump onto a completely new topic, but some of the shit in UK politics at the moment honestly makes you like despair. Like,
what the hell is going on with Labour? You need to. I've been seeing snippets. What the fuck is happening with Labour? Okay,
so I mean, we know that the Tories are collapsing, right? The next general election, chances are, will return a Labour government, right? And this is after 10 years of like Tory rule, longer actually. To be honest, we'll probably be closer to 15. But for whatever reason, even though the Tories are completely collapsing and there is no need to try and scrape voters away from the Tories, Labour is going absolutely full throttle to adopt like right-wing policies. They're basically, I say adopt right-wing policies, they're basically U-turning on all of their left-wing policies. They're saying that they will have to keep everything exactly the same. So one of the policies that they were talking about having to keep, because there's no money, there's Labour are adopting this attitude of like fiscal responsibility. And I think this has always been the problem with New Labour, kind of post Tony Blair, was that with Tony Blair, you kind of brought in that they, like, Labour want to be good managers. They think they can manage things better than the Conservatives can. And that means that they can be more efficient managers at all of the Tories' abhorrent policies. So it's like, I don't know the exact mechanism, but there's like cogs that like they hold, and there's like a line or like a mechanism that holds a cog in place, and every time the cog turns, the line kind of clicks and locks itself in, but it doesn't actually push the cog back into reverse. And I feel like that is exactly what Labour, like Labour ratchet theory, that's it, solidly endorsed, thank you. So basically Labour hold everything in place for the Tories to then push it even further right. So Labour think that they can manage the immigration system better. As a matter of fact, they say that the Tories haven't done enough when it comes to deporting people, right? And this is after Windrush and all of the fucking shit that we see with, like, you know, the Channel and like some of the rhetoric that comes out the Home Office and the detention centres. Labour think they can be better managers at this. And another policy that was obviously hated when the Tories brought it in, but it was the two-child cap. So the two-child cap is a cap on the benefit, so child benefit that you're able to receive. So you can have 2 children, you can have 3 children, you can have 4 children, but you will only ever receive child benefit for 2. Unless, so before we go into this, content warning, going to be talking about rape and sexual assault, so it's never a nice topic. But one of the caveats for if you are able to claim for a third child benefit, the person who's claiming would have to fill out documentation that confirmed that that child was the product of rape. So that's known as the rape clause. So the rape clause was inserted into this 2-child cap. The idea was that the person who was applying for that child benefit had to put in writing that that child was the product of rape. Had to go into detail on it, had to completely recount what happened. Evidence like had they made a police report was taken into consideration, all this kind of stuff. So the big thing was Labour saying that they'll keep the 2-child cap, and naturally by doing so that means they're quite happy for the rape clause to be in place. And they shrug their shoulders and say, oh well, that's just because we've got no money to do anything. Knowing fine well, and you know, we could spend a whole fucking other podcast on this, but that's not how government and central banks work. They can create that money to spend on it, and everyone always talks about inflation, but there are mechanisms in place that the government can create money to pay for capital projects, for welfare, all that kind of stuff. So that's something that they're able to do. So Labour naturally have come out with this, and they have been getting pilloried by all of the left ever since. I do not understand how there are still people in the left wing of Labour who can endorse the party's policies, because Keir Starmer and everyone in his fucking shadow cabinet are going to just replace the Tories and continue on exactly as normal. There is nothing that's going to change. Sorry, Joy, go on.
Labour was the party that, within my parents' lifetime, was the party that represented working class people who were being starved by an unjust government.
Yeah, so
By an unjust government.
yeah, modern Labour's told everyone who believed that to get fucked. One of the other things that they've done in the past couple of days, actually, was they were negotiating with unions. So unions have obviously historically, trade unions that is, have historically backed the Labour movement. Who would have thought, right?
Because they're Labour.
Yeah, right?
That's where it comes from. It was a union. It was a Labour... Okay, sorry.
Yes, so, well, what's happened is that the unions were all pushing for like a universally recognised worker status in the UK. So, for example, anyone, regardless of age or anything like that, the moment you enter the world of work, you are a worker and you're like afforded those rights. Right? That makes sense. So it means that, for example, you can't pay someone who's 18 to 21 years old less than someone who is 21 to 25 years old. And in turn, you can't pay the 21 and 25-year-old less than the worker. And this is like a flat salary for the same job, that is, as well. So it's not like junior and senior positions. That's like a different thing. But it's like if, you know, someone who's 16 and starts at, you know, a certain bit of work, they need to be paid, if they're doing the same job as someone who's older than them, they need to be paid the same amount, right? Which makes sense. And Labour's just went, nah. Like they're really pushing back on all of the unions kind of, I mean, because this thing, like Labour getting into power have the ability, I mean, they potentially will have a massive majority, right? And this is kind of the natural ebb and flow of like politics when you've got a two-party system. Eventually the country gets sick of one group and they just switch, and it is like a momentous like switch. So Labour will be in a position to potentially pass quite a lot of good things, but they're just not going to do it because they have since adopted this fiscal responsibility pish. I mean, there's really no difference between Labour's finance person Rachel Reeves and you know, the Tory finance minister. There's not that much between them, and unfortunately this is also a product of a kind of political class of people who all go to the same schools, who are all buddy with each other, and like, obviously, all politics, there is this certain level of like pantomime-ness about it. Mm-hmm. But I can't watch fucking Westminster anymore because it is just dog shit. It is like, it's fucking outright pantomime, and they bray at each other, and you know, it just, none of it is, it is pointless, and it's really sad to see. Like, I mean, you might have seen that Mary Black is not standing again to be MP, yeah. And it's just because she's like fucking scunnered with the whole place. It's just, it's in like, the whole place is just insidious as fuck, because you've got, you know, she was saying that an MP advised her that if she was not a multi-millionaire within 5 years of being an MP, she was doing it wrong. And it's like, what's the fucking point
of going into politics? Is not to gain power; it is to serve your community.
Yeah, it's to serve your community, country.
The point of leadership is service.
Yeah, but like, this is where it's yeah.
I'm taking painkillers because that gave me a migraine. That actually gave me, my blood pressure spiked so hard.
I mean, there was a sorry, this is another really funny thing. I say funny thing, it's just like funny just how fucking stupid and incompetent a lot of people in Labour are. But like, there's the Labour movement, right, which are all good people. And then there's the Labour Party. And the Labour Party attracts this certain group of people who are being referred to on kind of Twitter at the moment as like the briefcase layer. They're like the really young people in the party, probably like 18 to 25-year-olds that are absolutely like kissing ass at the moment to try and get that leg up. And one of the by-elections that happened recently, because people were resigning and whatnot, they elected a 25-year-old Labour guy, right, who is like straight out of Oxford. While he was at Oxford, he did work for a Tory MP. He's now a Labour MP. He's now the youngest Labour MP. He's the youngest MP in the House, I think. And it was like the first question he was asked after he was elected was, "What's your thoughts on the two-child cap? And do you endorse what Keir Starmer has been saying?" And it was robotic. His response was like so like pre-programmed. It was like they'd made this perfect little Labour boy in like a factory somewhere, and he was like, "Yes, because where's the money going to come from? We need to be fiscally responsible." And you're just like, fuck's sake. But one of the other by-elections, Labour lost because they treated all their activists in the constituency like shit. So they shipped up a bunch of staffers from London to run the campaign locally. And for those of you who know much about political campaigning, you're canvassing and stuff like that. So you're going around the doors and you're making sure that your voters turn out to go and vote for you, all this kind of stuff. So you're on your feet a lot of the day, and a lot of the kind of campaign like headquarters or whatever, they give you biscuits and tea, and you might be out for a couple of hours and then you can come back and you can get a wee bit of a refresh and you can go. So Labour staffers, it was pointed out on Twitter that there was like nothing like that on offer for any activists that showed up to do work in their own free time. They weren't getting paid to campaign or anything like that. But apparently all the staffers ordered a Domino's, but then took it into like a separate room and ate it away from the activists. And someone pointed this out, and all of the staffers like just turned on people, this is all taking place publicly on Twitter on the day of the by-election, and like they're saying you're not here to eat biscuits and put your feet up, you're here to campaign, you better get out there and stuff like that. And they're sitting like absolutely pigging out on Domino's in like another room somewhere. They shut the door so they didn't need to speak to the activists, and funnily enough they lost the by-election by a couple of hundred votes. And it's like maybe don't treat your activists like shit. And who knows, they might even, because you know what happens if you don't give them like teas and coffees and a place where they can rest in between going out? They go home, and then guess what, they don't really come back to go and do more campaigning. But yeah, so it's just been,
they were treating them like hired staff.
Yeah,
without paying them or giving them anything.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And of course, I imagine there's probably quite a few American people or people from outside of the UK who are watching this, but just to add even more shit into the mixture. So Scottish Labour are the Labour Party in Scotland. They answer to the UK Labour Party. They are not an independent entity. But Scottish Labour, by nature of being in Scotland, has to kind of lean towards more progressive policies, because that's where Scottish politics has been for quite a while. The Scottish Parliament has never had a majority Conservative. We've never had a Conservative First Minister. So there's a whole bunch of stuff there. I noticed that Ashradel, you're asking what canvassing is. So canvassing is when you go out and chap doors in the run up to a kind of election. Particularly on the day of the election, it's to make sure that your voters turn out. So some canvassing can be to check that you're are you still here? Are you still at this address? Are you a supporter of us? It kind of confirms all that. But then canvassing can also be have you voted today? When are you going to vote? Or you make sure you vote. We really need your vote. So it's just to make sure that all the doors are chapped, because some people need reminded and all this sort of stuff. And yes, you can interact with this stream, so don't worry about dropping questions in. But yeah, so on the Scottish Labour side, you've got to have Scottish Labour who are kind of leaning a little bit more to the the left of things, as they kind of should be, to be honest. But you've got Scottish Labour MSPs, that's members of Scottish Parliament, who are speaking out against the UK Labour wanting to keep the two-child cap. You've got the head of Scottish Labour backing the leader of UK Labour and saying that this is a great idea. And then you've got the Scottish Labour MP, because there's only one, the Scottish Labour MP also sitting on the fence between the two. Because
Scottish Labour's been wishy-washy for a long time when it comes to having any sort of backbone.
They would be immediately freed to do so much if they were just a separate entity from UK Labour.
Yes, they would.
Like, but they can't do that, and they hate the Scottish National Party and they hate the Greens because they've essentially moved into a space. I'd say Greens are definitely more left than the SNP are, but the SNP kind of stole Labour's place as being on the kind of left, and as UK Labour shifted further right.
Party.
Yeah.
It's the working class party, which Scotland primarily is working class.
And the SNP wasn't for a long time. It sat pro-business and all the rest of it. And to be fair, they need to really up their game on business in general. But
they do.
But the way that UK Labour shifted right has kind of dragged Scottish Labour into a position that's like kind of untenable, because it's like you've got, I mean, Scottish Labour are going to be like chapping the doors and being confronted with people going, but you guys endorse the two-child cap, and Scottish Labour have to say, well, we don't, but UK Labour does. So it's like, oh well, why should we fucking vote for you in the general election then, if that's just going to get funneled into that? Sorry, there's like two other things that are like, it's been a shit show, Joy. So back to the two-child cap. One of the things that's been fucking ridiculous is there's been people in Labour and people in Scottish Labour in particular say that the Scottish government could have gotten rid of the two-child cap, right? So the two-child cap introduced at Westminster by the British government, the Scottish government could have gotten rid of the two-child cap and made sure it didn't impact anyone in Scotland, right? Now,
so far?
Yep. How they would like the Scottish government to address that is, we can't vote it away because it's being imposed. They would want us to make sure that it doesn't exist in Scotland by mitigating it with a portion of the budget that we receive from Westminster. So Westminster impose the policy, give us the spending money, and we then use some of that spending money to basically make sure it's not passed down to people at an individual level. And
just slip the table under the money and hope Westminster doesn't find out what we're doing with our budget.
No. As they say that, I mean, we already do it with things like the bedroom tax. So it's like, okay, so Scottish Labour would be quite happy with us just eternally mitigating all of these awful policies from Westminster, even though they're arguing that they would be in power to reverse this. And basically what they're saying is they're using this to go, and that's why devolution exists. Devolution exists so the Scottish government can make different choices and choose to mitigate it. And it's like, but that's not a choice. The choice comes from the source. You can't be like, I mean, we could totally mitigate it. Why not? And then what would happen? Oh, that money would suddenly not be used elsewhere.
Yeah, that's... Yeah.
So well, that, as in that money might be used for, I don't know, schools or hospitals or more teachers or what, like, you know, there's always these metrics that are turned out, oh, this amount of money would have been better if used for like 100 new teachers or whatever it is. There's definitely like that at play. It just seems very silly.
Rather than build a better system,
Yeah.
we'll just pay money that we need for other things to prevent the worst things from happening because the other government is completely despicable and corrupt.
Yeah. And while I'm jumping all over the place, so obviously after mistreating their activists, they lost that by-election. And they lost it by a couple of hundred votes. And instead of Labour going, maybe we shouldn't abuse our activists on social media, they decided to blame it on an environmental policy that they had of a low emission zone. So they decided to go, it was actually our endorsement of a low emission zone that lost us the election. And you can already see what this is going to, I mean, they're gonna reverse all of their fucking eco stuff.
The low emission stuff is necessary because they found out that children in Glasgow schools had the worse air quality than children in Victorian mines. That was a thing that I read. The air quality that they were finding in some central Glasgow schools, children down coal mines in the late 1800s had better air quality than some of the schools because of the amount of traffic and pollution.
And again, just to, like, if this sounds like I'm jumping between a whole bunch of things, it's because it's that fucking silly. But Scottish Labour in Glasgow, as in Glasgow city councillors in the Labour Party, voted and were pushing for a low emission zone for ages, and they voted for it.
Yeah.
And then when it came to actual implementation, they reversed their decision and said that we were penalising taxi drivers. So they're on the side of the workers, but only when it's like the thinnest bit of convenient for them. And it's like the low emission zone comes in, it was like they were given a year, so it wasn't like the policy's passed and now it's a low emission zone. Like, they've got a year, and Labour's going to kick up a fuss about it, and I can guarantee you it will be on their literature. So, like, again, they just do not have a fucking spine.
I struggle to reconcile the Labour of my father. My father's been SNP for as long as I can remember, but before that he was Labour. I struggle to reconcile the Labour I grew up hearing about with the Labour that we have now.
Yeah.
The fact that fucking David Tennant, Doctor Who, is leading the Labour Party. He's been Labour his whole life.
Yeah.
He's always been on the side of Labour. He was very much like, I think Scotland should remain within the UK, and he was always Scottish Labour. And recently he's been going, actually, independence might not be a bad idea.
Well, I mean, he changed his views on independence a couple of years ago. To hear that he's leaving Labour, I haven't seen that recently, but fucking hell.
I saw that he made a comment that he was dissatisfied with the way Labour was going.
Yeah.
And for die-hard Labourists to be like, it might be time to leave. I mean, because a lot of Labour is tied to the identity for a lot of people. A lot of Labour is, we're working class. We deserve rights and all these things. And they coast on that reputation. And the fact that they are now distancing themselves from that, to me, is political suicide.
I mean, you say that, but they're just taking the Tories' positions. Like, I mean, it'll just be a battle between who's the more competent right-wing party now. So all the people who are right-wing will just vote for them. And then you'll have a bunch of people who still holding on to that, like, image of what Labour was, will go, well, I can't ever, like, I mean, I'm not saying that Labour are going to move so right that the Tories will be a left-wing option, but like the way that it's handled is that it'll just be two right-wing parties that you're voting for.
Can you imagine the fucking timeline we'd be in if Labour was the left-wing party? If the Tories were the left-wing party. Can you imagine how it would literally be Frostpunk? You'd be in an apocalypse, frozen tundra, where you're like, yeah, well, the Tories want the children, the kids to, they want them to work, but they don't want them to go into like the mine shaft, so they're the liberal option. Like, How
Yeah.
fucked do you have to be that the Tories would ever be the Liberal option?
I mean, the thing is that, like, with every lurch to the right that Labour make, the Tories get to be just like, oh, I'm glad you finally agree with our policy. I mean, that's what Rishi Sunak said to Keir Starmer at Prime Minister's Questions the other day. It was like, oh, I'm so glad that you've finally come on board with a policy that we introduced. And, like, Keir Starmer's got no fucking reply to it. Because it's just like, you know, he can't even bring himself to say, like, I hate the policy, but you fucked the economy, so I can't. He's just like, Keir Starmer has no reply, and I think, like, I don't know. I cannot see Keir Starmer Prime Minister being able to do anything. I mean, he's got, like, look
all the resilience of a wet paper bag.
Yeah, he's got no fucking charisma. I mean, like, he's what is he? He's a King's Counsel, lawyer and all this sort of stuff. But he's a bland, boring fuck. And every single time you see him, you go, Jesus. I mean, it's why people think he's called Keith. And the National did a really good front page where they put him in a Ken box. For the Barbie film, and it was like, yeah, it comes with all new catchphrases, and just that he's got no spine. But yeah, he's atrocious. Starmer could at least have an affair or something, spice it up a bit. I mean, yeah, anything at this point, honestly. He's like, a lot of people don't know what he actually stands for because he's never been upfront with that. I mean, I wasn't Jeremy Corbyn's biggest fan, but everyone kind of knew what he was about. Whereas, like, Keir Starmer's just like, he fucking U-turns all the time. He's like wishy-washy.
He's a blank canvas for the party to project onto. And he will change whatever he is doing based on whatever policy will help them get into power. As I've said before, there is no backbone, there's no spine to any of these people, because they're not acting in service of their constituency. They are acting to enable their own power.
Yeah.
And that's not what politics is. Leadership is not about power. Leadership is about service to your people.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm just getting frustrated with the SNP at the moment because, like, I think there's not really a plan towards independence at the moment. We're kind of coasting. And unfortunately, it's just entirely reliant on, asking permission. I don't think anyone's really went, here's the step-by-step guide of what we're going to do if, we're confronted with X. We can't really just ask politely forever. It doesn't work. So
I will say that on a personal, so the First Minister, I've seen a lot of his stuff to do with medical care, and just briefly going back to the NHS, there is a current lawsuit against the NHS for a lot of women who are fitted with these metal meshes to help with bladder incontinence, and a lot of the women end up disabled with it because it perforates things, it causes a whole bunch of problems.
Is this the thing about the surgeon, though? There was a big issue with the surgeon. Yeah.
Yes. And,
him in particular.
This woman stood up, I don't remember her name, unfortunately, at one of these things, and she was very emotional, and she was like, what are you going to do? And people were trying to silence her. And Yusuf's response was, no, let her talk, I need to hear this. And he specifically afterwards sat down and talked to her so he could understand beyond what he was getting across his table.
Yeah, I mean, he was in the middle of his he was in the middle of his opening speech at a convention for independence. It was, and yeah, the woman disrupted it, which obviously caught a little bit of snash from some of the audience who were keen to hear him speak. But he stepped away from the podium and kind of came down and went to talk to her. There was a weird thing about that because, like, folk were sharing screenshots where he went and, like, touched her arm as he was leaning in, and you had like a bunch of transphobes and stuff like that being like, look at how infantilizing he is, he's grabbing her and all this kind of shit, and it's just like
showing empathy and offering.
Yeah.
When I watched it, it did not look as if it was like a all little girl type thing. It was genuinely someone reaching out, having a moment of like, I want to make contact with this person. I want to make physical contact, because she was obviously very visibly distressed.
Yeah,
if you're first, I think it was an instinct of, how do I help you? I don't think it was, she's being treated like a child. I think it was a genuine human reaction from a genuinely kind person.
Yeah.
Like, how do I help you?
Yeah, I mean, he seems like he does seem like a nice guy. Like, he's doing his bit. He's going out and he's meeting people and all that good stuff. I'm just quite keen to see that turn into, here is a plan. It doesn't.
We need a plan. We do need a plan. I just hope he can take that humanity with him, because that's what makes me feel better about it. Because so many of the other parties are lacking in humanity. And that's worrying to me.
I mean, I think one thing that I find quite impressive about him, and this just comes from an experience, but as a person of colour in the most hostile fucking media environment, he's a pro-independence SNP guy. He has had to put up with a lot of shit from the media for fucking years now, all the way through. I mean, he's got quite a broad range experience, because he was on, he was on justice, he was on health, I think he was on transport before that. So he's got he's been in a lot of cabinet roles to have that kind of multidisciplinary experience when it comes to like understanding how different bits work. I would love to see that converted into, and here is our plan for, Scotland in the kind of the 2020s, 2030s, and this is what we're going to do to make it happen. Because I think there's, while I do think that there's a need to present a case for independence, there's also a really strong need to develop Scotland to a place where independence is a lot easier. As in we can do a lot of the legwork in preparing us for that.
Yes.
And that comes from getting all of our local authorities properly communicating with each other. At the moment, it's like, to be honest, I actually think Scotland would be better viewed semi-regionally. As in, without local authorities, a lot of the moment, obviously Glasgow is like a big council, is the biggest council. But I feel like, regions like, there's, Falkirk, Stirling and Clackmannanshire, which are kind of like a cluster. And it's like, they need to start coordinating with each other just as much as they need to start to sort the shit out individually. Because I think there was a thing a wee while ago where it was like Stirling and Clackmannanshire were talking about like doing a kind of eco policy together, but they weren't speaking to Falkirk, and it was like, Falkirk's got the refinery. And it's like, why would you not work together on this?
Exactly, yeah.
So there's
that camera's just spinning.
Yeah, it's okay, but actually we're getting a nice pan of your room.
It's trying to get, it thinks the sun is a face. And that, you can see it trying to move. Look,
okay.
The sun is a face.
That's what it is. But yeah, I will not go on this rant for too long, but I will say that there's obviously a lot of talk about people always talk about devolving more power to local authorities, to councils, so councils can do more and have more power in that set area, and I think that's great, but I think there also needs to be the political will and the ambition from the people who work for the councils. I think quite a lot of people who are in councils see it as a stepping stone to be in an MSP or an MP, but I also think on the operational side of that, you can't have people who are too comfortable in their role that they just don't do anything day by day. Obviously they do their work, and that's not a criticism of them, but there needs to be a little bit of oomph when it comes to right, we are going to transform this council into a kind of a modern, we're going to get all of our fucking digital priorities organised, and, we're going to make sure that everything's linked up and connected and all this kind of stuff. I don't think there is a driving force in many councils at the moment to go, let's fucking revolutionise how we do things. And I think if we do get to the point where Scotland's able to do that, we'll be in a lot stronger position to even propose independence to people. We shouldn't be at 50% for independence. We should be at 60 or 70 by now, So it seems a bit frustrating. But anyway, I will now shut up. But that's your UK download of fucking politics. As you can tell,
going offline for a while. This is what I get from not being connected, and all of a sudden everything just goes to worse shit than it already was.
You missed my blog for 1 week, Joy, and look what happens. But yeah, I think that's maybe a good place to wrap up, just considering our time. For those of you in the chat, don't go anywhere because we do our little after hours session. But for the people who are listening on the podcast platform of their choice, thank you very much for tuning into episode 12. 12,
yep.
And hopefully the recording's okay and it isn't too staticky. I'll need to have
your microphone fixed itself halfway through.
Oh, did it? Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even do anything. That's cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, see you next time, folks.
Bye bye.
Catch you in a bit. Bye bye.